What is going on, NFL fans? Welcome back to another NFL Whip Round. I'm Jeff Hartman, joined by Coach KT Smith. And before we go any further, let's start off with, if you're watching this on YouTube, give us a like, subscribe to the channel. We do appreciate it. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, give us a 5-star rating. It does help. With that out of the way, Coach, how's it going?
Going great. I'm a little depressed because we're entering like a dead period.
Yeah.
Not going to be a whole lot of exciting news, but we'll find enough to talk about for sure.
This is what I call the pump up period. So this is where you have like rookie minicamp comes out. So you get to see all the rookies in their new threads and they're in the helmets, and all these people see like these rather mundane catches against no defense. And like, this guy's going to go off this year. My favorite pump up video might've been a video that I think the Eagles put out of the players lifting. Like, they're just lifting weights. It's Jalen Hurts squatting. It's someone else going, like, they're going to win the Super Bowl. I was like, all 32 teams are lifting weights right now. They're not doing anything special. So I call this the pump up period. Yeah. Football and shorts, which let's ask you. So how much value do you put in this part of the preseason process as you're talking about team developing? How much do you put into this phase of everything?
First of all, I'm not going to lie. I've put up videos on our Ocean City High School football Instagram of our guys lifting weights. I'm not going to lie.
There you go. The only team in South Jersey that's lifting weights right
now. Exactly. Nobody else in South Jersey lifts weights except us. And I mean, you need things to keep kids entertained and interested, and they have short attention spans, So
yeah.
But to answer your question, I put a lot of stock in this time of year. This is probably a time of year that's not as big for commentators and media people and content creators for obvious reasons, but this is really for coaching staffs and for players essential. I mean, it's the install period, and the more that you can get done in OTAs and in camp, football and short, so to speak, the faster you can go once the pads go on. And it's a great opportunity, obviously, to evaluate some of the guys that you have, and you're going to find out some pleasant surprises. You're going to find out, hey man, this guy can digest a lot of information, or this guy really picks up the playbook fast. And then you're going to find out some not so pleasant surprises about the struggles that guys are going to have, especially your draft picks, making the leap between the last level and this one. So I think it's really important.
So you said the install period, which makes me think about, installing a playbook. And I didn't coach football. I coached lacrosse, and there were playbooks, and there was a lot of involved parts of that process and getting everything ready. At what point, though, when you're installing, let's say you're installing a new offensive philosophy or a new system, how long does it take for you to say, this isn't going to work? We don't have the personnel. We got to scrap the plan. Is it in shorts, or do you wait until you get the pads on? In which case, have you gone too far down the road that it's like, well, we're past the point of no return. We got to try and manipulate things a little bit. What's your thought on that?
How long was Matt Canada the offensive coordinator of the Pittsburgh Steelers? It took
too long. Too long.
Your job is to find the scheme that fits your players or the players that fit your scheme. It's got to be one or the other. And you can operate from both philosophies. In the NFL, it's probably a more common for coaches to have their system, and then you get to pick your players, so you can find the ones that execute that system. At my level, I don't get to pick my players, so I need to do it more of the opposite. There have been years offensively when we've been a 10 personnel spread team and really spread the field, and then there have been years where we've been double tight because it's all based on the kids that you have. So you can't miss on that. If you get to August and you're like, "Ooh, this doesn't look good," then you've really set yourself back. It's hard to remake yourself on the fly in the NFL because scheming and game planning is so important, and you just can't miss time on that. I mean, it's probably more important than any other sport, given the fact that you practice for 6 days and then only play once a week. So that's your job. You better get it right.
All right, but let's get into our 5 topics as we always do here on the NFL Whip Round, starting with, we are in that dead period. The bulk of free agency is behind us. The NFL draft is now in the rearview mirror, and teams are still having to find ways to finish out their roster. I don't think there's any team in the National Football League that can say, yep, we're done, we're good. So I think the question now is, you'd have like even the secondary trade market. What's a player or who's a player? Interesting, a name that you think could be moved before the season starts. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, now that San Francisco has seemingly, at least publicly, sort of put the brakes on moving one of their big wide receivers, Brandon Ayuk or Deebo Samuel, I'm not sure, right, if there will be a huge name that goes. There was some rumors out there back in February, early March that maybe Jalen Waddle was
Heard
going to
that.
be on the trade market, but
Yep.
I mean, Miami just picked up his fifth-year option. Doesn't feel like he's going anywhere, although they did draft 2 wide receivers and then they just signed OBJ. So that's interesting. It's something to watch out for. Maybe there is some smoke, some fire to go with that smoke. I think you'll see some minor moves, right? Like Treylon Burks, who was a first round pick in Tennessee a couple years ago, hasn't been real productive. He was the old regime. They got a new coaching staff in there now, and they've added a bunch of receivers since him, Ridley and Hopkins and those guys. He could be available to a team that needs like a bigger, thicker slot type guy. I think Bailey Zappi might go. I don't know how much that moves the needle for people, but you look. New England drafted Drake May, and then they took Joe Milton later in the late round, and they signed I think Jacoby Brissett. So they're pretty well set at the quarterback position. So I think all those names might be in play. Maybe James Bradbury in Philly because they took the 2 corners, Mitchell and DeJean, and Bradbury's a veteran making a decent amount. He might be somebody they look to move, but I don't know if we're going to see a marquee name.
I think there's going to be a couple names that maybe surprise people. I think to me, we can throw our names. You did a great job with that. I think it's more when would it happen. I think a lot of teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers being one that they do still have some team needs they want to address. Can they do it post June 1st? That changes a lot with the structure of the trade and of contract implications and money owed, et cetera. There might be some teams that are willing to do that. And the Steelers might be a team that if they do still, and we have heard that they do still want to get a wide receiver, well, maybe they go to a San Francisco 49ers post June 1st and say, look, we'll give you a second round pick for X player. But because it's post June 1st, you're going to have to pick up some of the tab on this year's contract. Some teams might be willing to do that. I think you're going to see some movement. The question I have, though, is post June 1st, how late does it go? How late does it go until you have to say, like, okay, we can't bringing a guy in at the beginning of training camp is really difficult because he's missed all that install time that we talked about at the beginning of the show. What would you say is the latest a trade could be done where you can have or does it depend on the position that the trade can come in and that player can still get acclimated quickly?
I think it depends on the position. I think you can get an edge guy and you can say, hey, you're going to take a little bit to learn the full playbook, but in the meantime, put your hand in the dirt and go get the damn quarterback. I think you can do that with certain spots, and obviously others are going to be a lot more nuanced. The quarterback-receiver relationship is tricky the later in the season you get because of all the timing and all the sight adjustment and all that stuff. But I think that the more on the interior you are, the easier it is.
What about safety? Because I still remember in 2019, Minkah Fitzpatrick is traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he comes in. I think the first game was at San Francisco. He had two takeaways. I think he had a fumble recovery and interception. I'm like, well, that didn't take long. Is he a special player, or is it also different in the secondary?
He's a special player. He's a special player. That there's so much going on at safety. There's so many things that you have to be able to do. Safety on the defensive side of the ball is a little bit like tight end or H back on the offensive side of the ball, in that you are involved in every facet of the scheme. You got to be able to cover, you got to be able to tackle, you got to be able to communicate, fit the run, all that stuff. So I think that those positions are special in that sense.
Okay, let's go to our next topic, reflecting on the draft for just a bit. Much of the talk was about the new quarterbacks, these new regime, getting ready to start their professional careers in the league. What about the guys on their way out? So who do you think is an established quarterback that could be making his last stand as a starter in 2024? Who is that guy for you?
Yeah, I'm really, I don't know if skeptical is the right word, but I have my doubts about Aaron Rodgers. I know the Jets have gone to great lengths to rebuild that team, and they've stockpiled some talent. They got some really good receivers, add Mike Williams, drafted some linemen to fortify the front for him. They're really trying to take a run at this thing. But it just feels like he's, been out of football now for the better part of 2 years. He missed all but 4 snaps of last season. He's 39 going on 40 years old. He's in a new system that he's really never had much opportunity to play in. And I don't know. I just wonder how much does Aaron Rodgers really want to do the work that it's going to take to continue to be hugely successful at that level. I mean, he's still obviously he could probably wake up out of a coma and walk onto the field and still look better than half the quarterbacks in the NFL. But how long can he play at Aaron Rodgers' level? How well will the Jets do in what's going to be a competitive division with Buffalo and Miami in there? If the Jets aren't great, we've seen him throw people under the bus. We've seen him be publicly disgruntled. It's New York City. There's a lot of distractions. I just wonder, can Aaron Rodgers conquer it all at this point in his life when maybe his attention might be on some other things as well?
So when I think about The Last Stand, you bring up Rodgers, who is an aging quarterback. You mentioned that. I think about what about quarterbacks that might be on their last opportunity to seize their role as a starter in the league. It doesn't mean they'll be out of the league. I would give you an example of Mitch Trubisky in 2023. He had an opportunity to start with Kenny Pickett injured, and I said this on multiple fronts. This is his last chance. If he doesn't do it now, he's going to be relegated to backup duty for the rest of his career. And he didn't, and he will be as he's back in Buffalo, just as an example. I think that here's a list. I'm looking at the list of quarterbacks in the NFL. Here's a couple of names that I think are on their last stand. I think Deshaun Watson's on his last stand. Even with that crazy contract, the Cleveland Browns bringing in Jameis Winston. You hear there's people in Cleveland, by the way, that think that Deshaun Watson doesn't want to play football anymore. And I'm not sure if I've said this on this podcast or another one, but they think that he's kind of done. He got his money. It's all guaranteed. And he's fine, like just walking away, which would be the most Cleveland thing ever.
100%.
I think Matthew Stafford is getting to that point where you have to wonder, how many years does he have left? He's been beat up. He's aging. I think that you look at Daniel Jones and how much time are they going to give him in New York with the Giants? And they gave him that lucrative contract, but he's got to put up something other than one playoff performance. I think that Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh is possibly on his last stand. Is there anyone else that fits the criteria that now that I bring that up like that?
Off the top of my head, I don't know his contract status, but where do you think Kyler Murray stands with the Cardinals? How long do you think his leash is?
That's interesting. Because I saw his name on the list. I mean, he has a hefty cap hit. I mean, his total cash is $49 million this year. Like, that's insane. That's an insane number. You see the names of like Dak Prescott, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Jared Goff, all these players that have literally done a lot in the league. Kyler Murray has done none of it.
Right.
I don't know, but they could have drafted a quarterback this year and they didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. I just know that, with a guy like Kyler Murray, there's a sense, I think, that his best attribute, his athleticism, gets muted a little by the fact that he's not that tall. That he really does. He's not the most accurate passer in the NFL. He's not like Drew Brees, who was generously listed at 6 foot tall, but could stand in the pocket, and really shred coverage. He's got to be able to get outside. And how much can you constantly make a living doing that? I don't know if you can. So he's either has to evolve kind of in a way that Russell Wilson did there for a while. Russell Wilson was that kind of guy, but then he settled in there for a little bit and he learned to become a better pocket passer. Murray hasn't yet made that transition. So I wonder if he doesn't in the next year or two max, then, Arizona's probably going to look elsewhere.
I also look at a name like Geno Smith. He's probably in his last stand in Seattle. And I don't know why. Tell me why, Coach. Why do I look at Josh Allen's name and think, is this it? Because I think the Bills have had a horrible offseason. I mean, they've gutted that roster for salary cap purposes. I just don't see him winning it, at least not right now. Am I crazy?
I mean, I really like Josh Allen.
I do too, but I just don't know if he has it.
I don't know what Buffalo's doing. And I know you said like they're shedding for salary cap purposes, but is there a rebuild then in the works? Because you don't shed salary while you have a top 10, maybe even top 5 in the league quarterback. You don't tear it down and rebuild it in his prime. I mean, the Steelers kind of tore their team down a little bit or remade their team at the end of Ben Roethlisberger's career in kind of like a one last gasp type thing. But he'd already won 2 Super Bowls and was already legendary, et cetera, et cetera. The Bills have never gotten there, but they're right on the precipice of it. And in the midst of being on the precipice, they seem to be visibly regressing. It's a weird dynamic going on there.
That's a great way of putting it with Buffalo, because I just don't see it in Buffalo. I don't see it right now. It's a weird situation. I don't know. Let's move on though. Let's go to still talking about quarterbacks on our third topic. Of the 6 quarterbacks who were selected in round 1 in 2024's draft, which one do you feel has inherited the best situation? Whose path to success benefits most from his landing spot in the league? It's a tough question.
Yeah, it is. I don't think J.J. McCarthy is the best quarterback in that draft, but I think the fit of J.J. McCarthy in Minnesota with the Vikings under Kevin O'Connell, with the weapons that they have at receiver. I mean, being able to have Justin Jefferson, T.J. Hawkinson, Jordan Addison, Aaron Jones now at running back, man. I mean, and they have a strong offensive line. I know defense is a little bit of the issue in Minnesota, but he's really set up for success in an offense that is going to resemble a lot of what he did at Michigan. I mean, it's not, they're not going to pack it in and run that kind of power offense, but schematically, there are a lot of similarities. So I think, he kind of gets to stay in the same part of the country in which he was raised, and he's very popular and he's very comfortable. And so, that really feels like a great fit to me. And that's a good team in a division where they can be competitive right out of the gate. He's got a chance to have a lot of early success.
I'm going to go Drake May, because I think that the Patriots, even under Gerard Mayo, I don't think they're going to thrust him out there right away, because we've seen how detrimental that can be to a young quarterback's success and overarching trajectory in the league. And so I think Drake May could be maybe one of the most talented players in terms of arm talent in the draft class, but he might have to wait his time, and that's okay. Like, that could actually benefit him in the long run. Jaden Daniels intrigues me because I think in Washington, the bar was just so low. I mean, look at what they had last year. Sam Howell and a mixture of Taylor Henneke. Like, what is that? I mean, if he goes in there and is even just a little bit dynamic, they're going to go head over heels for this guy. And they're going to think that he is the next coming of RG3, which is probably what they want. And they'd probably be happy with that if they're honest with themselves. And so I'm going to go with Drake May being in the best situation. I think Jaden Daniels, in terms of quick success, because they're probably going to throw him out there early, he might be. And they have some playmakers too. No one talks about Washington, but they have some decent talent on the outside and around him. He might be able to have a nice little area there, a little pocket for himself to kind of succeed in his own way. What do you think?
Yeah, I love that Austin Eckler signing for them, because I think that he's the perfect complement for a system like that. It'd be interesting to see how much does Kingsbury put on his plate right away. The air raid as a system, if that's what Kingsbury is going to run, really is a timing and rhythm based offense, and it takes a lot of reps and a lot of practice time to really get everybody on the same page. It's not the thickest playbook. I mean, Mike Leach, one of kind of the creators of the air raid, and who Kingsbury played for and learned the scheme or the system from, he was famous for like having an index card that he called his game on. You see these guys, we always talk about the Andy Reid Denny's menu, but you see he had a single index card that he called a lot of his game from, because so much of the air raid was about the base 6 routes against every look imaginable with all these site adjustments. And so if you can get Jaden Daniels and his receivers on the same page in that system, they can have some success early. The guy I'm most interested in terms of his early success is Caleb Williams, because I think he's going to start day one. And there's a lot of new pieces, including a new offensive coordinator in Chicago. And that's all got to come together fast, because if he goes out early and flops or really struggles, it'll be really interesting to see how everybody handles that pressure, media, all the.
And that's a reason why I didn't take Caleb Williams in this one question, based on the fact that they've been down this road recently when they took Justin Fields 11th overall. and it didn't work out. And he had different coaches and different coordinators. And so here you have, like you said, new offensive coordinator, rookie quarterback. They're going to put him out there right away. It is going to be boom or bust for Caleb Williams. And so for me, that's not the best situation to
Right.
succeed. And so that's why I would take McCarthy. I'd take Daniels. I'd take May all over him. Hell, I'd even take Michael Penix Jr. because he's not going to play barring an injury this year anyway. So he's going to be given time. Caleb Williams is not going to get that time. And this is probably why Chicago can't find a quarterback. So let's go to our next topic. Now that we've had a chance to evaluate the personnel changes throughout the league via free agency and the draft, has the needle moved much in terms of the league's power structure? Has this offseason created new Super Bowl contenders, or are the usual suspects like the Chiefs, 49ers, Eagles still the cream of the NFL crop? What say you, Coach?
Yes, they are. I don't think that it's changed anything. I really don't. I mean, I think obviously some teams have gotten better. You and I are Steelers fans. I think the Steelers are much improved, but I don't think the Steelers are in that discussion yet. I mean, Kansas City's had a really good offseason. Yeah. The speed they've added at the wide receiver position is depressing if you're not a Kansas City fan.
Right.
Because it just makes them that much more scary. San Francisco has managed so far to retain a lot of its talent, despite the fact that they're going to be up against the salary cap pretty soon. They get just about everybody back. And I don't know, Philadelphia had a big weakness on defense that they remedied by drafting maybe the two best corners in the entire draft. Somehow they got them both. So you look at Detroit has had quietly had a really good off season. They've gotten better. Other than Buffalo, who we just mentioned, I don't know if there's like a top 5, top 6 team in the NFL that appears to have gotten worse this offseason.
Yeah, I was going to say Buffalo was regressing, so I might take them out of the upper echelon. Detroit was a team I was going to mention if you didn't, saying, let's not forget about these guys. They were really close to getting there last year. And it just was, Dan Campbell his way through it. But still, I think when you look at, there are more teams, the top echelon remains intact, except for I think Buffalo, but there are some teams that are inching their way upwards. Baltimore had another good offseason. They lost a lot of coaches, but they do what they always do. They had a good draft, young, good core nucleus of players. If Lamar Jackson can stay healthy, they're going to be competitive and vying for the number 1 seed in the AFC. If anything, this offseason, in terms of the needle that you mentioned, NFC has more top echelon teams in the AFC. Do you agree or disagree?
That's a good question. Philly, Detroit, San Francisco. I'm interested in Dallas. They have had a poor off. They've had an off season. Yes. That's a mess. And if they don't win this year, they got some big issues.
Yeah,
because they have some huge contracts that they have to deal with after this season. And I mean, Jerry Jones, he's 81 years old. He won right when he took the team over in the early 90s. He won 3 Super Bowls, appeared to be building this dynasty, and he hasn't won anything in 30 years. They haven't been out of the divisional round in 30 years. And he doesn't seem to be able to stop meddling enough to get out of the damn way and allow the guys who really know football to succeed there. And so I think as long as he remains, firmly in charge, he's an impediment. The draft, it was fascinating when they were showing, like the so-called war rooms in the draft. And in most of those rooms, it looks like men at work. It looks like there's tables and there's papers and stuff's cluttered around, and you got guys with their sleeves rolled up and they're on the phones and they're interacting, blah blah blah. Did you see the Dallas?
I did not see this. No.
It looked like a scene out of The Apprentice. I mean, Jerry Jones is sitting at the middle of a table, and his seat is literally elevated above everybody else's. Everybody else is seated to the side. They're all dressed in suits. They look like sycophants. They've got the star behind Jerry Jones on the wall over his head. The lights are dim, so the star is glowing. I mean, it looked like a made-for-TV movie, and it just felt absurd. Like, this is not how you conduct business, man. This is work. This is work. And you're going to get in arguments, and you're going to have disagreements, and you're going to have guys shouting at each other. And in Dallas, it was like, hey, the Lord of the Manor has blessed us with his pick. and that's just not working out for them.
Well, I want to go through a couple teams that I feel like are inching closer to that contender status. You brought up the Steelers, and yeah, we're both Steeler fans, but I think they are on their way and they're closer to where they were. They had a 10-win team last year. They have a tougher schedule this year, but they did improve the roster in a lot of ways, mainly at the quarterback position. I don't think the LA Chargers are going to be as bad as they were last year with a Harbaugh at the helm. They've met some good offseason moves. You could tell in the draft they didn't go for the flash. They went Joe Alt, got the tackle. Justin Herbert should have more protection, which is what he needs. Brandon Staley is no longer employed, which is automatically an upgrade. Miami is Miami because Miami's all flash, it seems. And then when the weather gets cold and you got to go to Kansas City, can you win that game? And I don't think either of us believe that they can. Are there any other teams, though, that you see inching closer to that upper echelon on either side of the docket?
Well, as we were talking about in the beginning of the show, the Jets will be interesting. It'll be worth keeping our eye on them. They could absolutely put it all together. They're talented. They're really talented. Yeah. And if Rodgers plays like Aaron Rodgers, they'll be scary. But that obviously could also go south in a hurry. I think they're a team to kind of keep your eye on. And then in the NFC, I don't know why, man, but Tampa Bay just feels like a team that you don't really pay much attention to them, but they're pretty good. They're pretty, and if Baker Mayfield can do it again, they've added some talent there on the defensive side of the ball, and they could be a team. I don't think they're making a Super Bowl run, but they could be a team that wins that NFC South and then surprises somebody by pulling an upset in the playoffs, and suddenly they're in the divisional round again.
Yeah. You never know. Let's go to our fifth and final topic here. The UFL, the United Football League news. Here we are talking about the UFL. The St. Louis Battlehawks. I know. The St. Louis Battlehawks drew over 30,000 fans to a home game for the third straight time. They beat the Houston Roughnecks 22-8 on Saturday. The NFL's talked about potentially expanding, and that would include maybe a team overseas. Rather than do that, should they consider St. Louis once again? What are your thoughts, Coach?
Yeah, maybe I have a soft spot for the people of St. Louis, a city I've literally never been to. So I don't know the town, but
yeah.
But it feels like they have great fans. The Cardinals always have rabid fans. The St. Louis Blues always have tremendous fans. The St. Louis football teams, it felt like the Rams. They had an owner who was not dealing with the city, in good faith, and was constantly trying to sort of extort the city with these threats that he was going to leave for LA. And then he made him a million promises about he was going to keep the Rams there. And then he pulled the carpet out from under everybody and booked for LA anyway. And then I think they wound up having to pay the city a boatload of money because of not dealing with them in the right way, breaking their lease and all those things. And yet, they just seem like a passionate fan base that keeps turning out. Yeah, I watched one of those games earlier in the year. Anthony Beck is the head coach there, and his son Rocco, who's the starting quarterback at Iowa State, he used to train with us in Ocean City, and so Anthony has a house in town, and he comes to our practices, and so just out of curiosity, tuned in because he's the head coach of St. Louis. There's 42,000 people there. I couldn't believe it for a game that involves players that hardly anybody knows. And then you look at Jacksonville, which has this lethargic fan base, and a couple Arizona, which sometimes struggles to fill the seats. I don't know. It just feels like St. Louis deserves an NFL team.
Right. The thing is I agree with you 100%. But the NFL sees? They see an opportunity. They're going to look at St. Louis and say, "We've been there, we've done that." We've had multiple teams there because the Cardinals used to be in St. Louis. Then the Rams were in St. Louis. So we've had multiple teams there. Nothing has lasted. The city, the whole area might not embrace like some of the financial obligation that they expect from NFL cities. So let's go overseas. Let's take a team to England and let's have a team that's based out of England. That's what they'll do. That. I agree with you. I think that St. Louis should have a team. It's a town that has other professional sports teams. Not like you're going to a city that doesn't have any type of infrastructure for professional sports. They do. They've proven that they could do that. They've won a Super Bowl when they were there, the greatest show on turf. It sucks, but I think you could probably agree with me. The NFL is going to go in a different way if they have the option.
Probably. And I don't know what expansion does for the NFL, because right now with the 32 team structure, you've kind of it's perfect. It's perfect for scheduling. Although now that I on the fly rethinking this with the 17th game, and now you hear talk about maybe there's going to be an 18th game when the next CBA is negotiated, you might be able to add a couple teams and rework everything in a way that makes sense. So I don't know, man. You just don't want to overextend yourself. You don't want to saturate the market too much, and now have it become lose your cost effectiveness.
I think we'll see an 18th regular season game before they talk about expansion, but that's just my guess. So, all right, let's do a player profile. Steve McMichael getting ready to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, battling ALS. Coach, what do you want to say about Steve McMichael?
Yeah, I read a really good piece on The Athletic about him the other day, and just it's a very sad story, battling ALS. I mean, this is a guy who was a 285-pound beast of a lineman on those tremendous Chicago Bears defenses in the mid-'80s. There's some great Steve McMichael stories. I mean, reading that article, I was laughing out loud at some of them. I didn't realize that he had joined the WWE in the mid-1990s, and that one of his best friends is Ric Flair, who is prominent in the article because he's visiting Steve McMichael regularly. And Ric Flair was telling some awesome stories about wrestling with Steve McMichael and those guys, going out on the town and partying. And Ric Flair is a legendary partier and not even being able to keep up with Steve McMichael. And now you got all the ex-Bears that are planning on showing up to Canton. And they basically say that's going to be an incredibly emotional thing. Hopefully he'll be okay. He'll make it there. And you get to have all the Bears come up on stage. They're talking about carrying him up there, physically carrying him up. So obviously you hate to see something like this, but the outpouring of support and just the football community, it's special, man. And you see it in instances like this.
Yeah, and I hate to throw a wet blanket on this. So I had Steve Gleason, obviously from the New Orleans Saints, has brought a lot of attention to the ALS community, and he's still alive, and it's amazing what he's done for bringing some notoriety and some attention to what a horrible and debilitating disease this is. For those that don't know, ALS is Lou Gehrig's disease. My friend, one of my best friends died at 37 of ALS, and it was probably one of the worst things to ever witness. And, he was an unbelievably smart guy. He was a global controller for Volvo, traveled all over the world. I mean, this guy with numbers was just, it was crazy. And so I can't even imagine, though, a professional football player, a professional athlete, having to go through a time where your mind is sane, your mind is sharp, and your body is physically failing you. For Steeler fans out there, Tunch Ilkin, who also was diagnosed with ALS, but passed away from pneumonia, actually. I said this at the time, I'll say it again, and it may sound very harsh, but his family should be very fortunate that they didn't have to go down that long and very challenging road. For the McMichael family, I hope that everything goes well, that he's able to be there to experience this Hall of Fame induction because he deserves it. Because when it gets to the point where it's awful, the very end is the absolute worst. So, I wish them nothing but the best. If you want to donate money to ALS research, it has been helping. I know that they've been getting some breakthroughs on the disease. So, like the whole ice bucket challenge, which was viral early in the 2000s, they still need money. And so I'll do that a little ad there for that organization. Any organization that does research on ALS is definitely worthwhile.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not trying to end the show on a downer, but man, that's
that was my fault.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
It's a great tribute to him, and it's a sad story though.
On
a positive, I will share that as you and I record this, it's May 6th, and it is Cam Hayward's birthday, and he shares a birthday with Jason Witten and Joe Thomas. And I was thinking that might be the strongest threesome of NFL players to share the same birthday of any date of the year.
Wow.
So I'm gonna put a little research into this and see if there's a stronger threesome that share the same birthday.
Is that a tease for the call sheet this week?
It is not. But actually, maybe it is. I don't know. I'll think about it.
What do you have going on in the call sheet this week?
So, yeah, I'm going to pick back up a little bit with the conversation you and I were having about quarterbacks and their fits in a lot of those places. And we're going to I'm going to pick some of my favorite draft picks by scheme fit for, the teams that have selected them, and we're going to dive in on that.
That sounds great. Sounds great. Make sure you check out Coach's work, not only on Fans First Sports Network's YouTube channel, but also the Steel Curtain Network YouTube channel and at steelcurtainnetwork.com for all his Pittsburgh Steelers content. Check out the call sheet every single, is it Thursday, right? Because I know we had a Wednesday in there, but this is
all Thursdays. Yep.
All Thursdays. Yeah. Check it out on Thursday at the NFL feed. Wherever you get your podcast, search FFSN NFL. That does it, Coach. Thank you for another show. We'll see you next week on another NFL Whip Around. Take it easy.